everybody. Hi. I'm getting ready to do the video for the 4-panel 5x7 ornament. So I'm going to flip my camera around so you can't really see me. So this is done in 2 hoopings, and I guess I better save my design. I'm not really prepared, right? Anyway, this is done in 2 hoopings. So I already have both hoops with my tearaway stabilizer. Hey ladies, I already have both hoops done with my tearaway stabilizer, so I don't have to worry about that in a minute. What I've done is, a while back, I bought a whole bunch of layer cake quilt pattern or quilt fabric packs. So what I've picked out here is some really cute ones with Rudolph on them. So if you've noticed, I've cut them on the diagonal, and I did that on purpose because of the stretch in the fabric. So there's some things that I've learned about cutting on the bias, cutting on the diagonal. Cutting on the diagonal seems to give you a little bit less stretch, but you can also use some fusible interfacing on the back to lock the stretch in place somewhat. And I'm going to do this so that the opposite sides are in different colors. On this video, I'm going to skip the 2019 just so we can get the construction of the ball down. So I did these both earlier today, and I did make a couple of adjustments before I sent the files out to you guys. I have a cat in here that's trying to mess with my stuff, and I have a couple of dogs, one of which is looking at me like, "Who are you talking to, Mom?" So if you guys want to swing over here for a second and say hi to Remy, the big black dog over there, and the little lazy dog taking a nap is Crypto. So those are my, whoops, drop the camera. Sorry. Those are my buddy pups, and I have a couple of cats in here too, one of which is probably sleeping, and the other one is Winston, who probably will interrupt us before too long. She likes fishing around for things. So let me save my design real quick onto my little USB stick, and we'll see how fast we can go with this tonight. I may end up redoing this video for the main group, but for us in here, I think it's going to work pretty well. I have to find my folder. Here we go. The last thing I stitched was the little plaid key fob. If you guys have not seen that yet, it's really, really cute. It came out a lot cuter than I expected. I do have some jump stitches that I could trim out on this one, but can you imagine that thing in all the different colors and matching all your plaid stuff? Plaid is very popular this year. I like it, so it's been popular in my life for a really long time. So here we go. I have the 5x7 4-panel hoop 1 and hoop 2 that I'm copying to my USB stick. And let's see. Sorry, I'm not real organized tonight. Doing this video was kind of a last minute thing while the husband and I were at supper. I thought about it earlier today, and then I thought, nah, I won't do that, but then I decided I will. So here we go. Flip back over to my designs. Okay, let me open them up so I can see what I'm doing. So, I'm really not very organized. I'm sorry, guys. It'll be fun. It'll be fun, I promise. Let's see. This is the 4-panel hoop 1 and hoop 2. And 4-panel hoop 2. Okay. So hoop 1, like I said, I'm going to skip the 2019 on this one. Hey, Leslie. I'm going to skip the 2019 on this one just so I can save a little bit of time. But the 2019 for you guys on your test out, you can skip it. You can replace it with a monogram. You can put a pretty little swirly design. You can add an applique, whatever you want to on that first panel. It's totally okay. So let me load up my design and get this sucker started. So the 4x4 is slightly smaller than the 5x7 for obvious reasons, just to make them fit in the hoop. So I did the 4x4 on the diagonal, so it, or on the diagonal in the hoop, so it could go a little bit larger than up and down. But so the first thing you have is the placement stitch. I am going to now pick one of these fabrics to be the base stitch. I'm not putting any numbers on it, so I don't mind having a patterned fabric at all. I'm just going to lay it out again on the diagonal to cut down on some of that stretch over the placement stitch. I know this is a waste, but it gives me lots of little cute pieces to use for applique bits elsewhere for accents. So then you're going to stitch color stop 2, which is the tack down. I have to get rid of the cat off the table for a second, sorry. Otherwise, she would fish out all sorts of fun things. I'm doing this with red thread. Both of my fabrics have red in it, so the red thread will be complementary to both, and you may not be able to see it quite so much. All right, I'm going to skip past the 2019, and this is going to go straight to the left side. I don't know if you can see that real well here. It's going to go to the left side stitch. So it's going to stitch down this edge after I put the fabric on. So after you get your fabric tack down done, you would do your stitching on this base fabric, and then the next thing you want to do is layer your fabrics. So you're going to take the piece that's complementary if you're doing opposite sides, and you're going to lay it face down. Now this one is a patterned fabric, so I'm going to make sure that I lay my root off in the same orientation as the other, making sure just to cover all of those stitches, the tack down stitches of the other one. Now if you're going to place a ribbon across the top for a hanger or a piece of string or something like that, now is the time to do it. I do want a piece, so I have some ribbon here. I'm just going to cut me a length of red ribbon. Doesn't have to be too terribly long because you can always add a hanger to it afterwards. But you want to make sure that whatever you do, you don't let your cat get your ribbon. Mine did not this time, but the other cat sure has quite a few times. Anyway, this ribbon is double-sided grosgrain. There is no print, so it doesn't really matter which side you put down. Just line it up, fold it in half so that your loop is across the center, and your raw edges here are above your stitch line at the very top, so that when you turn this thing, your raw edges are on the inside. So I am going to just tape this in place. I'm going to try to take this out of hoop, unclip it as few times as possible. Okay, so I got that taped up and out of the way. As you can see, it comes down to the center of the design. I always like to put another piece of tape here in the center to keep the needle from getting snagged on it and yanking the whole thing out. I've done quite a few of these balls over the last week trying to get this design perfect. It's as close to perfect as I can get it. If you guys know of a better way, let me know. I've never stitched a snowball or a round ball in the hoop, but these are constructed, from what I can tell and from what other people have said, just like a snowball would be. So I am covering that up, making sure all the stitches are lined up underneath and nothing's going to be sticking out. And then I'm going to stitch this next color stop. Again, it's going to come down just on the left hand side. None of these take very long. I think what takes the longest is just placing it and making sure it's in the right spot every time. So your next piece of fabric, just so you're watching and paying attention to what's happening, if you're using fabric as the opposite of the one that you just did, so if you're going to have a ball with 4 panels, you're going to have 2 panels the same opposite each other and then 2 the other way. So if you look up here, I did not get my ribbon exactly in the middle, but that's okay. Once you hang it, you really can't tell what's on the top anyway. Depending on how you embellish it, you can put a button, one of those large buttons across the top. You can tie a bow on the top, so you're not really going to... Oh. Okay, are you guys there? Okay, my video just stopped for whatever reason. I don't know if my home internet or Verizon is having a little glitchy fit, but if there's a break in the video, I'm really sorry, but it shows that it's live right now. So again, you want to make sure that you hold this flap of fabric out of the way. You're going to take your next piece of fabric and you're going to lay it face down again. You want to make sure that you have Rudolph or whatever print you're working with in the right orientation, and you're going to cover that design again with the next piece of fabric. Okay, so let me pin those out of the way, and then we're going to pop the hoop back in, stitch it down once more, and then we're going to move on to the second hooping of this set. So if anybody missed the sign up for the holiday contest and you want to hop back in there, I'll open that post back up when I'm done with this video for a few more minutes. You can add your name to it, and then I will send you the link to the Dropbox with the designs. So now that we've got our fabric pinned down this way, we're now going to stitch on the right side of it. And when I open this up, you'll see what I'm talking about when I say it's going to open up like you're opening a flower to the center. So basically you have a base of fabric face up, you put another piece of fabric face down, and then you fold that fabric open to the left, another piece of fabric face down that you're going to fold open to the right. So what happens now when we remove the pins is I have a lot of little extra pieces of fabric around the edges and stuff. You can cut those off and save them for little applique bits. When you open it up, you've got the center of the design that's sticking out here. So we're going to pop this out of the hoop. Again, this is on tearaway, so you can just rip it out of there. I don't have any of the numbering on there, so getting rid of the stabilizer is going to be crazy, crazy easy. You just pop the middle out. Okay, so what's going to happen now is we're going to go ahead and hop over to hoop number 2. Let me change my design. Okay, hoop number 2 starts much the same way as hoop number 1. You have a tack down stitch or a placement stitch and then a tack down stitch. Okay, this is the hoop that doesn't snap unless I get a little manhandly with it. So there you go. Okay, so while that's stitching, I'm going to show you guys, because you know, watching a tack down stitch is kind of boring, or placement stitch is boring. When you fold it open, you've got actually 3 layers of fabric. This is the base. This is the base piece. This was fabric number 2. This is fabric number 3. And then we're going to marry this up to fabric number 4 after we stitch fabric number 4. So again, you're going to watch how your orientation of your print is, making sure that your fabric goes over the tack down line or the placement stitch really well, and you're going to run this stitch again. So while that's happening, I'm going to trim up some of these edge pieces that I know we're not going to need ever. I want to make sure that I leave some of the edging on here so that I have room to turn the fabric here when I'm done and have a place to close up the hole that we used to turn it with. Okay, so I'm just going to leave it as this, not trim it up a whole lot more. Don't really need to at this point. You will when it's all done, but I kind of want to get some of this excess out of the way so it's easier to work with. So I've kind of given it a rough cut. Oh, I didn't mean to turn my camera. Hold on. So I've kind of given it a rough cut. You can see it's the shape, and I've just gone a rough outline of it. If you notice on this side, there is no stitching on one piece, on one edge of this. That's so that we can actually marry it up to the piece that's in the hoop now. So what you want to do, if you look here, if you open this up, back up to the center, your ribbon's in the middle, you want to go ahead and fold that right to those points. If you can see, that's the point there on the bottom, and that's the point at the top. You want to fold that on the point so that you get the center. So you're going to end up with the sandwich folded with right sides out. Your ribbon's probably going to pop out of there, and that's okay because you're going to move it out of the way in a second anyway. So you want to make sure that you orient this correctly. This is the top with the ribbon piece. This is the bottom. If you look at what's in hoop 2, you have a top point and a bottom point. Might be a little bit difficult to see on the screen, but here's the bottom point of that. I'm just going to take my fabric marker and extend that up so that when I am lining it up, I can see it a little bit better. It gives me some visual. So I'm not sure if you can see it, but I did put a little mark with my fabric pen at the top. This is air and water soluble or disappearing ink, so it won't matter on my design. So then what we're going to do next is stitch on the left hand side. So this is the piece all folded up. I'm going to tuck this ribbon up and out of the way so that it is not in the stitch line and not truly down the center. So I'm going to tape it back out of the way in the middle there. Get it up there out of the way. Okay, so now I've got my ribbon tucked out of the way. I'm going to make sure that my design is folded in half and marry it up to my hoop, and I'll show you that here in just a second. One of these days I will have a real studio to work in, and I'll actually be able to show you everything that I'm doing all at one time. So I am matching up that top point from the pieces that came from the first hooping to the top point in the second hooping. And I'm going to secure everything together except this piece here that's not married up yet. Okay, that's the piece we're now going to marry up to this second hooping. So let me pin that out of the way. So I'm just going to secure this piece in a couple of different places, but you have to be really careful and make sure that you're lining up your points. You see the point here on the bottom of this, and you want to make sure that you're marrying that point up with this one on the second hooping. So be really careful, line it up, because this is what's going to make your ball round or not round. And it's going to make the 4 points in the center line up or be off center a bit. Trust me, the top one may be off center some because of that ribbon piece, but that's okay because again we can cover that with a bow. We can cover it with a button or another piece of embellishment at the top, whatever you like. So I'm going to go ahead. If you open this up, you'll see all the center pieces in there. It is lined up to that top point and to the bottom point. I'm going to go ahead and fold that over and secure this piece down so it doesn't ride up in the hoop and make this panel not the same size as the rest of them. So let me go ahead and secure that in a couple of spots. Normally I tape everything, but fabric doesn't really play well when you're taping. So I'm going to pop the hoop back in the machine. This hoop is one that is kind of stubborn, so I actually do have to pop it back in. Okay, so if you're watching now at the top, I'm not sure if you can, there's going to be a slight space at the top, and that's going to allow some ease in the fabric when you're turning it. Again, you won't notice that after you turn the piece at all. It's going to marry this loose piece to the bottom piece of hoop 2. Watch your fingers. Okay. Now if you notice in hoop 2 there are 5 color stops. The 5th one is now to secure the last 2 bits together. And this is how. If you notice, no, what did I do? What did I do? I flubbed up. Oh no, I didn't. Here we go. Okay, so if you notice, when you take the pins out of this, what was on the right hand side, and you start unfolding the layers, you have these 2 pieces are matched up together. This piece is matched up with this one. You have another piece that's matched up, and then you have one that's a loose flap. That loose flap is now going to be secured to those 2. And if you notice, I really flubbed up. I did not do my fabric so that I would have opposite sides together. So I'm actually going to have half a ball in green and the other half in the ivory color Rudolph's. So that's one way to do it, totally by accident. Or if you're really careful and pay attention, you can end up with a green, an ivory, a green, and an ivory. So I'm going to go ahead and secure this piece back on this side and hold these 2 flaps out of the way. Again, you want to make sure that you are lining up your top point and your bottom point so that your ball is the correct shape when you're all done. So I'm going to secure those pieces out of the way. One really good thing is you have placement stitches or tack down marrying stitches on all of the sides already except for one. So you can use those to line up the other piece out of the way. And that should almost guarantee that your top and bottom pieces will be lined up properly when you're stitching this final step. If you notice on hoop 2, there is the last 2 color stops, 4 and 5, are about 1/3 each up the right side of this pattern, and that is to leave a hole for turning. So the hole for turning is going to be about center on the right hand side. I'm just going to secure that piece into the hoop a couple of spots, and again you want to make sure that this point is still lined up with the top and this point is still lined up with the bottom. And let me snap this hoop back in place. Well, there we go. You do have to muscle that one. I need to mark that one. I think I thought I had marked it one time as the bad hoop, but I guess I did not. Okay, so now I'm going to stitch color stops 4 and 5. 4 is going to stop about 1/3 of the way up. The needle will move past the open space, and then it'll stitch the other 1/3 at the top. Okay, needle moves, and then it stitches the other way up to the top. So the bottom stitched all the way on point, the top again left a couple of stitches open up here, and that's okay because again that's going to let you ease that ribbon out. So make sure you have no pins anywhere else, and you can just pull this right out of the hoop. Okay. So I don't really think you guys want to sit here while I stuff and turn this thing, but I will trim it before I turn the video off so that you can see what I do for the turning for the opening. So this is the opening side over here. I want to make sure that there's nothing on the back side of it, that I only have those two pieces because that's what I'm going to be using to secure the turned piece. So I want to clip to the seam allowance, and I'm going to leave this flap. So I know that I mentioned in one of the written instructions that you want to trim these separately, and you really do, because if for some reason your flaps get out of alignment of each other, you might end up cutting your fabric, and you really don't want to do that and cut your seam allowances. So this is, I can get rid of that piece right now. Okay, so now I want to come over here and cut the bottom of this. And again, this is going to give you, since I'm using the pieces that came out of the layer cake packs, I'm going to have lots of these little small pieces that I can use for other things. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that off right here. Okay, so then you want to make sure that you pull your next piece up. Again, that you're only with the two pieces that are sewn together. You guys might be able to do it with everything in one cutting, but I'm so afraid that I'm going to clip a line of stitching that I want to do it in the sections. It just takes a couple minutes longer, that's all. Okay. Okay, so now I have two of my flaps trimmed, and I have two flaps left. So I'm going to just come back down here, start again. What you're going to end up with is an inside out, looks like a football shape, but it won't be when you're done after you turn it and stuff. So I don't know if any of you work in the medical field, but you know what a balloon bladder is, where they go in and fill up your artery and they push the balloon through and they do these tests. Well, that's kind of what this is. It's going to look like a bladder. Okay, or the inside of a football or a baseball or a basketball. So they call those bladders, and that's kind of what this looks like, is a deflated bladder at this point. I'm not trimming the stitches of the pieces that are together. That's just the row of stitching or the piece of stitching that was holding it to the stabilizer. So when we pull the stabilizer out, we actually have some stitching that's kind of irrelevant at this point. If it's in your way and loose, get rid of it. If it's not, then don't worry about it. So on the top and the bottom now, you can trim a little bit across so that it's going to help with that point. Please be careful not to cut your stitching, but you can get fairly close to it. So now you want to pull this through. And remember, you've got a piece of ribbon in there. That's your tie. You can use twine. You can actually skip it in the sewing step. And if you have a long enough needle, you can stuff this completely. See, the ribbon comes off a little bit off center just because of how it's attached together. You can actually, if you have a long enough needle, I don't think I do in this pack, but I've got an upholstery needle set. You might be able to get a longer one than that. But you can actually, what I thought about doing was taking some twine or some raffia after the ball is finished, putting my needle through the top after it's threaded, pull it all the way through to the bottom, and then tying some beads or string or other embellishments to the bottom, and then a nice raffia or string bow at the top, something like that. You could either do it with leather strapping too, anything that's really thin. But anyway, so this is what it looks like before stuffing. These are the tabs after you stuff that you're going to use to turn and tuck it in and finish off that with either a blanket stitch or fabric glue or some other closing method, whatever you prefer. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and turn the video off, stuff this sucker, and come back and take some pictures. Thank you.